Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
All right.
You know what? There's no place I'd rather be. All right, let's go. Hey, that's one of my favorite songs. I spin to it, okay? I spin to it. Okay, thank you, young man. Okay, 1,000 miles away, but not quite that far. Good, good. Okay, now I got some questions I'd like to ask you before I get into my lecture. I'm asking you some questions, rhetorical questions, just think about it. But if you want to raise your hand, you can. Now, how many of you all have heard, I should say, let me start here. How many of you all like to have fun? How many of you all like to be involved in activities that help people have fun? Okay. Now, everybody here, have you heard of the Department of Defense? Okay, and when I refer to the Department of Defense, I'm going to refer to it from hence on as DOD because it's shorter. It's only 3 letters. Okay? Now, how many of you have heard of military recreation? Okay? How many of you know about morale, welfare, and recreation, MWR? Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about because that's where over 35 plus years of my career has been in, working for MWR, for the Military Services, Department of Defense, Army branch, and Air Force branch. Okay? Now, how many of you all think you might get bored in this class? Okay? Please don't. You know why? Because. All right, come on, my man.
Don't trust me.
Does anybody know what that song is? Like, there's no place I'd rather be. Yep. That's why you're not going to get bored. All right, good. Thank you. Okay, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my program. I'm a program of a profession. Hopefully, it would entice you to maybe want to go and work for the Department of Defense in recreation or another field. Now, I promise you, they're not paying me to say this. Okay? This is because something I love and I happen to get into. And I got into it by attending Mississippi State College for Women, as we know it now, Mississippi University for Women. Now, I'll tell you how I got started. Dr. Mary Kate Miller invited a gentleman from Columbus Air Force Base to come and speak to her community's recreation class. Okay? He was the chief of the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department at Columbus Air Force Base. He talked about the program and all the different areas of recreation that was available. And I like to travel. And we started talking about recreation and what he did. I said, hey, that's something I like to do. I think I like that. And so once he spoke to me, that's what gave me the idea and led me toward recreation. Okay? So now, I graduated from the W, and Dr. B drove me down to Florida State University. And one of my classmates in the graduate program of Leisure Services and Studies, she had just come from Germany working in recreation. And she would talk to me about all the civilians working in recreation, how much fun they had in recreation. And guess what? That's something I want to do. So before I completed my graduate work, I applied, I went to the career placement office and applied to work for the Department of Defense. But my idea then was to actually work for the Air Force and a place in the United States. Well, about 3 weeks, or maybe I should say probably around the July time frame before I graduated, I got this call from the lady. She introduced herself, and she said, well, I have this job in Korea. Would you like to go? And so in 75, Korea was not looking too good. And I think she picked up on that by my tone, okay? She said, well, you don't sound too enthused. I said, ma'am, not to go to Korea because it's looking kind of shaky. She said, what about Germany? I got it. Nothing, I didn't ask any other questions. I said, I'll take it. Okay, so in September 75, I left Golden Triangle, flew out with Dr. B and I think some other instructors that saw me off this first time flying. So I got to Germany. And I was the recreation specialist. How many of you have heard the term recreation specialist? That's what you are. You're a recreation specialist if you're in recreation. It's just another term for program director for recreation center. But it sounds pretty impressive. So my job at that time was to plan and coordinate recreation activities for the military personnel, primarily the military personnel and their families, and primarily for the military personnel because she wanted to do programs that would improve and lift up the morale. Because in '75, there were a lot of bases in Germany, and we kind of know what was going on. You may not know, but your parents could tell you. And so I needed to do something to help build up the morale so that they could accomplish the mission. Because I can tell you what happens. If you don't have a high level morale, you're not going to do a good job. Think about it. And that's key. And so I became the program director, and some of the programs we did were unique. I thought they were unique, okay? Give you an example. One of my first trips, and by the way, in the community centers, we had what you call ITT. Does anybody know what that means? What does ITT mean? Okay, no, I know what you're thinking, but it's information, travel, and tours. It was nothing but like a tour office. So we planned recreation tours. And one of my first trips in 1976 was to Innsbruck, Austria, to the 1976 Olympics. Now here's a little girl from Aberdeen, Mississippi, did undergrad work at Mississippi University Women, and a master's in Florida State, going to Innsbruck, Austria for the Olympics. All I've ever known about it is I've seen it on TV. So we actually took a bus for a weekend, and I was lucky enough to be the tour guide. Okay? And I can tell you how much it cost. It was probably about $100 and some, probably less than $125. Okay? We got tickets to 3 events. 120 mile ski jump, speed skating, and bobsledding. Okay? And you may not think much of it, but try to go to the Olympics now for that price. Even if you're in Germany, you're not going to get that rate. Okay? That was one thing. So we planned one-day tours and weekend tours. And if I went, I was like the tour guide, you know, she's a tour guide, you know. I couldn't speak the language, but I didn't need to because we always usually had an English-speaking tour guide on the trip. And so just to travel was in itself a reward. Now, what are some of the recreation programs? Did you say what you're talking about there? What about recreation? Guess what? And nowadays, it probably would not work because of high tech and all these games and gaming that people got. But pool tournaments, that used to be popular. Pool tournaments, ping pong tournaments, chess tournaments. These are some of the things we planned for the members on the weekend. Now, I worked in a recreation center where we were open 365 days out of the year. 366 if it was leap year. So, and we're normally open on weekends from about 10 to about 10 at night. And through the week, we probably open up around 12 noon to about 10. And if the husband or the wives want to know where their husbands was on weekend, what would they call? The community center. Because they were usually there playing pool or playing cards. Okay, and this gave them something to do. Now, other programs we did, talent shows. Okay, talent shows. I could remember when we used to do Thanksgiving. Now, you know how people think about cafeteria food, right? When you're in school. Oh, that cafeteria food is just like. But let me tell you something. The military felt the same way about the dining facility food. But let me tell you what I would do on Thanksgiving. The dining facility was below me. I would go there and put on a cap and volunteer to help service the military personnel. Well, at night, the food they had left over, they would give to the recreation center. Okay? And we would serve that food, and the military people would think it was the best thing since light beer. But guess what? It came from the dining facility. The same place they eat every day, but they couldn't stand the food. But I lucked out because I'm not a cook. If I can't nook it, I don't cook it. But anyway, so what happened was I had one of the employees that was a very good cook, and she did a good job of making it look very presentable. And then we would have a famous band every year to come, and we would pack the house with about 400 people. Now, these are some of the programs that we did, but we also got money to do the programs. And it makes a difference when you have money to do the program. Now, what we did on those programs, you should see the enjoyment and the appreciation on the members' eyes when they got through. And you couldn't pay for it. It was priceless. Because first of all, guess what? They're in another country, different language, culture's different. And for somebody to take the time and plan that type of program for them when they were not working, was unforgettable. Unforgettable. Now, I also got into sports. In Germany, how many of you have been to Germany or heard your parents talk about Germany? Okay, in Germany, it was like corps, C-O-R-P-S, with the 5th Corps, the 7th Corps, and under each corps, you had military communities, okay? Under military communities, you had local sub-communities, okay? Now, military communities had several locations. So I worked at Freeburg Ray Barracks, which, by the way, is where Elvis Presley was stationed. And remember this, it's going to be on test. Elvis Presley was stationed at Ray Barracks, Freeburg, Germany. And he was in 1st or the 32nd Armor. In fact, they had a room in the dining facility with his paraphernalia. So now remember, that's a test question. I don't want to trick you. I believe in giving an open book test, but I'm going to tell you what that is, okay? But anyway, so he's stationed there. So I was in the Gießen military community. In Gießen military community, you had several locations. You had Freiburg, which is where I was. You had Kirchgorn and Bussbach, which was 2 separate installations, but probably less than 15 minutes apart. And then you have Gießen Depot. That made up the Gießen military community, okay? And we fell on the 5th Corps. So 5th Corps maybe had several corps, okay? You had Baumholder and you had Hanau. Those are the next 2 largest that I remember. That's how layout was. Now, a lot of times we would work together on programs. I worked in recreation centers. From 1975 to 1976, I was actually a recreation specialist. What is it? Program director. From 1976 to 1978, I was a program director and the acting recreation center director. I was acting to be the recreation center director because the director actually returned back to the States. So I was doing 2 jobs for the pay of 1. Okay? Now you laugh, I mean, really, no. And this is where I got my experience. So you have to be real flexible because if you got the skills and they know you got the skills, sometimes you get more work. But I accepted it and I enjoyed it because it paid off because in 1978, I got hired to be the real director. Okay? Real director, I got a little more money. And I got more responsibility because I was a supervisory recreation specialist. What is that? Director of a recreation center. Okay? That's what it is. You got a fancy term and then you break it down. Okay? And then I got a program director. I got a chance to hire a program director. I was no longer the program director, except when he was not there. So we got into these programs and we used to work a lot together. And to give you an example of some of the programs we had like talent shows. So we, as the several recreation centers, would get together, plan and coordinate, and do a talent show. We had this director from Kirchgorn who was very good in performing arts. So what she would do is we would practice and we'd put on the show. So like Christmas, they'd come to Freiburg and do the show for the whole community, sub-community. Then we'd go to Kirchgorn, the Bussbach, we'd do it there. Then we'd go to Gießen and do it there. Now, how many have heard situations like that where you get that type of experience? Okay, it's different. It is different. You know, recreation centers in the United States is very good, but it's something unique about that type of program and environment. Again, because we're in a foreign land, the language barrier, the culture. So we have to bring these families together to help boost the morale and keep it going. Other programs we did, 5th Corps will host a chess tournament. What that meant is each recreation center had to have a local chess tournament or pool tournament, and the winner would go to Gießen Milcom and compete. Then from Gießen Milcom, the winner would represent us at the 5th Corps. And then we would go to USMA. And so there's a lot of planning. You have to be very flexible. You got to really promote the program in a unique and different way. That's how we got people involved, okay? So arts and crafts, they had their own area. Youth centers had their own area. Outdoor recreation had their own area, okay? So now in 1978 to 82, I worked as a director, okay? Then I went to a new job, which was youth activity centers for the Gießen military community. I was a branch chief. Now I'm the branch chief. Okay, I was doing hot stuff then. I was the branch chief. What does that mean? I had several youth activity centers under my supervision. Gießen Depot, Kirchgorn and Bussbach, Bad Neuheim and Freiburg. And for the layout of Gießen military community, and in a lot of the MIDCOM communities, you had an arts and crafts branch chief. That means she had an arts and crafts center in Gießen, Freiburg, Bussbach, and Bad Neuheim. the gym, kind of what we call a gym right now, it's a fitness center, but they had a gym. That branch chief was in Freeburg, Boostbach, Gießen. And sometimes you had to drive 30 minutes to get to one location, okay? And so some of the things I did for the Youth Activity Center is I was the supervisor of all the youth centers. We had a very big youth sports program, which is where I got my coaching experience from, and also where I got the experience for laying out the football field, lining the baseball field, lining the softball field. Now, what I'm telling you about this is, in my field, health, physical education, recreation, and by the way, when I was at the W, we called it the HYPER, H-P-E-R. And we had one student named Terry Hall from New Orleans. She would call him Physette. And I'll never forget, Dr. Thomas said, "What's a Physette?" She could not stand for us to use it. So when we want to tease her or play with it, we say Physette. But anyway, so all that experience in education I got here at the W, and also at Florida State. But I was fortunate enough to land a job with the military Department of Defense where I got a chance to use all that experience. And to me, that's important. When you pay to go to college, to me, I want to get paid for something I went to college for. I want to use that experience. And just to let you know, I almost went into the Air Force, okay? But then I started listening to people that said, "Jane, but you know something, if you go in the Air Force, you may not get a chance to work in your field." Okay? I thought about that. I said, "Oh, no, if I want to do that, because I went to college and paid all this money." And so I decided to work for the Department of Defense. There's no way I would have done that probably if I had gone in the Air Force as an officer. Because at that time, most of the recreation positions was held by civilians, not the military. But all the experience I got at Florida State and the Derby, my classes, worked for me. It paid off. So now in the youth activities, we got a big sports program. And so you had football, baseball, softball. Those were the main events. And I had some funny times, some good things happened there. You know, it's good to see when you walk in a program and you have a sports director at a local facility and they bring the program up from 30 people to 300. That's amazing. Or in Fifth Corps, we used to do programs for teens, and every MILCOM had a signature program. The signature program that we came up with Gießen was a disco boat ride down the Rhine River. You think this is fun? Get on the Rhine River on a boat and have a disco ride. It's exciting. I mean, it is. Can you imagine dancing on a large boat? Disco? It's fun. I'm serious. It's the jam. It's the jam. Okay? They also, now keep in mind, they also had a lot of fraternities and sororities over there, and one of the fraternities, they used to do it for adults. And so we came with the idea, so let's host a Fifth Corps boat ride down the road for teenagers. It went off like fire. There were about 220 plus students the first time we took the trip. So now every MILCOM had a signature program. One had a dance. Every year, you know, that time there was a signature program. But I hate to say, I think we had the best one. And I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you. Okay, disco broke down the Rhine River, 200 plus teens in their chaperone. And this was unique. Now, how many places in the United States can you take 220 teenagers on a boat up and down the river to dance? Give it to me. What about Mississippi? What we got in Mississippi we can do that? Anything in Mississippi? Huh? Can you think of anything? What about the Tombigbee River? Not a good idea, right? So, working with youth, now I've gone from adult recreation to youth recreation. And again, we had arts and crafts, the summer camps, the before and after school program, the sports program. We also took them on tours. Okay? So now I've done that. And so I'm the youth branch chief for Gießen MILCOM at GS9 with those facilities. I had another worker who was working at Baumholder Community MILCOM. She was in the same situation. She had about 4 or 5 youth centers at that grade. So she decided to switch to the Air Force, okay? She said, "Jane, you know something? You should apply for the Air Force because guess what? I got one youth center at the same pay grade, the same responsibilities." She said, "So you should switch over." I ain't no dummy. I went to the Air Force. You know why? 4 youth centers, GS9, dealing with different personalities in every community. Because you have to work with colonels, lieutenant colonels, sergeant majors. Now, I got 4 communities. I have to deal with all those. Plus, I had to talk to the general, okay, for the same pay. So when she told me she went to the Air Force and did the same thing for one facility, it didn't take me long to wake up and smell the coffee. So I applied to go to the Air Force. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting the Army down. That's just the way it was set up, and I enjoyed it. Because can you imagine the kind of experience I got? Again, it goes back to my education at the W and Florida State University. Because I would not have been there if it had not been for my experience here and at Florida. Because it prepared me for that type of work. I think it did. And I enjoyed it every step of the way. Now, I went to the Air Force from 1986 to 1991 at Zweibrücken. So the youth center, I'm a supervisory recreation specialist. Just a big term for director of the youth center. And we basically had the same program: sports, arts and crafts, summer camp, one-day tours, the whole works, self-directed activities. Except there was a realignment, and I was detailed to the outdoor recreation center for the Air Force. Again, another form of recreation. So I've had rec centers, adult experience, youth center recreation experience. Now I'm the director of outdoor recreation. And it was pretty good. It was cool because you know what? Zweibrücken had the only ice skating rink in the Air Force in Germany. It was right across the street from my office. The only thing I didn't like, it was cold in there. So I didn't have to stay too much. I could play in other activities. Okay, and the 2 activities I want to focus on is one is Volksmarchen. How many of you heard of Volksmarchen? Volksmarchen? Nobody? Volksmarchen is a very outdoor European sport. It's where you walk. Okay, usually there are Volksmarches every weekend, usually on Saturday and Sundays, in different locations in Germany. And I think the primary rule then was that guess what? It had to be like a certain distance from the other one. So like Aberdeen and Columbus could probably have a Volksmarch because of the distance. Okay? And it was walking. It was usually 10 kilometers, which is about 6 miles, or 20 kilometers, which is about 12 miles. And it's a very good, popular outdoor sports. You can take your dog, you can go, really, it's a good family outdoor outing. You have your checkpoints where you stop and get food, beer, hot dogs, bratwurst, glühwein. Yeah, you don't have to know about it. Glühwein is nothing but, to me, is a hot wine. Okay? And in the wintertime, it came in handy. Okay? And normally when you finish the walk, you would get a medal, or sometimes they would give you a plate, and they would give you awards for the youngest person that went, the oldest person that went, the largest group, and the smartest group. And you get a major award for that because it was a big thing. And so I did that, the first one I did for the Air Force. We had about 1,232 people. And you can say, Jane, how do you remember that? Because it was just something about that event. And I got a certificate for it. But that was the largest one they had since I took over. And you work with the German American Club to get it planned. You lay out this route. And the route is usually in forest area, through the town, and by some historical sites. It's a great family event. It's a great family event. And guess what? That's something that could be done here in the United States. That's something that could be done here in Columbus. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying. It's a good way to exercise. I heard on the radio, I think it was yesterday, about Mississippi State University having that, is it walk to work day or something? How many of you have heard that? It's going on? Okay. Do y'all not listen to the radio or the news? Now
I'm studying too much.
You gotta give them, teachers, you gotta give them a break. Give them 30 minutes a day just to listen to the radio. Right? But anyway, so it is a good exercise, and I think they've done it in the States, but it's not as popular in the States as it is in Germany. Okay? And I want to backtrack, and sometimes we do backtrack in our presentations. That's okay. But anyway, the very first time I got involved in Volksmarchen was the program director I hired at Freeburg was going to do it. He was going to be a project officer because he knew about this program, Volksmarchen. He got a new job. So who did it fall on? The real director, me. And so I said, well, now I've never done a Volksmarchen before, so what am I going to do? I contacted the German American Votes Marching Club, co-sponsored with them. We worked together, and the first one we had was 1,500 people. So I guess what I'm telling you is you have to be flexible. And if you get a program that you've never done before, don't be afraid to take it on. You find somebody that's done it before. Or you talk to several areas, several organizations that have done it before, and take the best of the best. It's called benchmarking. Okay? Take the best of the best, put it all together. Adapt, adopt, and pull it off. And that's what I did. I did it 3 times for the Army. First time over 1,500 people. The second time over 600. You say, that's a 50%. What happened? You know what happened there? You have to book them a year in advance. So the next day after everything's over, I scheduled another one for next year. So when I did that, there were no major field exercises on the calendar. So that was good, right? Mm-hmm. About 3 or 4 months before the Voice March, they threw in a major Army exercise, which means the bodies were not there because they was in the field practicing their mission. That's why I had 600. The next year, it went up to 1,200. So I relieved. So those are different programs, those experiences that I've had. And you know something? All that planning, all that coordination, and knowing what to do, not being afraid to talk to people and get out and step off on faith, came from my experience here at the W and Florida State University. You know, and it was a great experience. I enjoyed it all the way. Sometimes I was very frustrated. Sometimes there were long hours. Laying out the field for the Votes March, the day of the event from 3 a.m. to about 10 p.m. But at the end, it was worth it. It was worth it. And I think working in recreation is a lot of fun because you get a chance to meet a lot of people. You get a chance to make a lot of people happy. And you help them relieve their stress in words, if only for 2 hours or 3 hours. And that's worth it. That I went to a conference, and one of my roommates that we shared a room with, everybody, you know, she was kind of free-spirited, real free-spirited. So they said, where's Anne Marie? Somebody said she's probably under a tree daydreaming somewhere. And guess what? She had rented a bicycle and decided to take a break. It was sitting in the tree. But people laugh. But that could be her leisure activity. That could be what she needs to relieve her stress. Okay? And so you get into so many areas, and I've gotten into so many areas working in military recreation. And I've loved it. And I'm not saying it's been perfect. No job is perfect. But you know something? I had that positive attitude. And if you keep a positive attitude and you really enjoy what you've done, that too shall pass. Okay? And so that is what I have to share with you about my experience of 35 plus years working in Miller-Burdeshaw, which is Welfare and Recreation, for the Department of the Army and the Department of the Air Force. They both was kind of different, but they still had the same mission and same purpose. And guess what? When I finished in my degrees, I didn't think I would, I thought maybe I would work in a community center, a community recreation center. So I didn't have any idea that I would get into outdoor recreation, which is part of recreation, right? Physical education, youth centers, training. And so the door is open, And now sometimes there's specialties where you can specialize and focus just on outdoor recreation. But I got a chance to get all that experience. And I loved it. And before I stop, and this is my lecture is coming to an end, don't cry. Don't everybody stand up at the same time, clap. Okay, but I do want to take this opportunity to recognize instructors that was very influential in my career and who was very supportive when I was here at the W. I can tell you that. I didn't feel any different. I just felt like I was a human being. They supported me, they loved me, and they had a big part to play in my career. First of all, and this is not all of them are important, okay, but I'm just starting with the front. Dr. Thomas, Dr. Garrett, Dr. Wells, and last but not least, Dr. Burdeshaw. And there are several that are not here. One is Dr. Jill Upton, who was the coach for the basketball team. And she also was the coach for the World Women's University Games, I believe. University Games, that's what it was, University Games, right. And then we also had Dr. Not Dr. Dr. Stewart. Okay, and I could probably tell you some stories I won't. But they also gave me a lot of skills in my leadership ability. And I tell you why. Dr. Gary appointed me, myself, and Dr. Eastwood to be the key student point of contacts for major tennis tournaments they would have every year. Every year they would have a big tennis tournament. And I guess each year they got students to kind of like spearhead it and be the major point of contact. She and I was appointed. Okay? That was a good thing. Let's see. Dr. Something else happened. I was trying to think who was. No, I'm just trying to think. Dr. Wells was my gymnastics instructor, and also my golf instruction. And I played golf almost every weekend. And I'll never forget one time I was playing golf. I took a golf course, and I hit the ball out of the fence. She said, "Jane, now this is not softball." Because you know the swings are kind of similar. But I did that, and Dr. Thomas, I forgot, let me see, you taught everything, but I tell you one thing I remember about her though, she did not like us to call hyper and phys ed. It is health, physical education, and recreation. That's a mouthful. And when Terry would say phys ed, she would just say, phys ed, what's a phys ed? But I want to thank you all for the love, the care, the support that you've always given me. And I do know that I'm here because of our Creator and the faculty that we had here, my parents. And some of you all might, well, how'd you choose the W? How many of you all want to know why I chose the W? All right. Well, what happened was, one of my homies, you know what a homie is, right? You know what a homie is, right? You all know what a homie is, right? So one of my homegirl and my mentor, Laura Andrew, had just come from the East Coast to finish up her undergrad work here at Florida State, Valeria Evans. And she kind of talked to me about going to the W. And her mom was an elementary school teacher in Aberdeen, Mississippi, very special lady, special skills, unique teacher. She actually drove me down to the W to give me a tour of the campus, and I think we went to the admission office, talked to them, and found out what I needed to do to get in. And the rest of it's history. And I came, I enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoyed the instructors, a lot of my classmates, my teammates. And so that's kind of how I got here. I had a mentor who saw something in me and thought the W was a good place for me to go. And guess what? They didn't pay me to say that. So somebody probably, well, I wonder how much she's getting paid to say that. Nothing. It's free because it's from my heart. And thanks again, Dr. Bean, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this presentation. Thank you, students, for coming in to listen to me. And I hope that it's giving you some idea, if you don't know, that you might say, hey, I might like to do that too. But let me explain something. It's changed, okay? The organization structure and the way things in the military have changed now. Because back in '75, there were a lot of bases in Germany because of the war and all the threats. So now they've downsized because most of the bases in Germany have closed. Some of the bases have downsized. They don't have many of the activities they used to have. But I do know they're still hiring, and I can tell you why. Because one of my neighbors in Albuquerque got a job, got hired to go to Saudi within the last 2 months. So they are still hiring. There's still a possibility. And there are other areas that you can go into and work in the Department of Defense other than recreation. Department of Defense school system. And I did talk to a young lady in Albuquerque when I first got there, going. I said, hey, why don't you apply for a Department of Defense position, because she was a teacher. Guess where she applied? She went to Okinawa, now she's in Germany. And that's probably in '96 and '97. So that's just one area that you can focus on. I just tried to give you a different concept of what military recreation was for me and how I done it and what some of the tasks and jobs I've had in the arena. But guess what? It started from undergrad students. At least it did for me. Okay. That rest of my presentation. Thank you again, Dr. Bean. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.